Lisa Martinez stood at the blackboard writing equations about gravity and force. Her hand moved steady across the board, but inside her mind was not steady at all. The classroom smelled like chalk and teenage sweat. Outside the windows, she could see kids playing on the grass field, running and laughing like kids should do. 3 years ago, Lisa had been Commander Martinez. She wore heavy armor and carried plasma rifles. She fought aliens in space battles that shook entire star systems. Now she wore simple clothes and carried only chalk and lesson plans. The change should have made her happy, but some days it felt like wearing clothes that did not fit right. Room 204 at Roosevelt High School was her world now. 32 teenagers sat in front of her every day, and most of them did not care about physics. They cared about dating and sports and what their friends thought about their hair. Lisa tried to remember what it felt like to be that young and worry about such small things. The morning had started normal. Lisa talked about how objects fall and how gravity works on different planets. Some students took notes. Others stared out the windows or played with their phones when they thought she was not looking. This was normal too. Then Jake Sullivan decided to ruin everything. Jake was 17 and thought he knew everything about the world. He sat in the back row with his friends and made jokes during class. Lisa had dealt with worse than teenage boys, but Jake had a special talent for finding the exact wrong thing to say. "This is boring," Jake said loud enough for everyone to hear. "When are we ever going to use this stuff in real life?" Lisa had heard this question a million times. She started to give her usual answer about how physics helps us understand the world around us. But Jake was not done talking. "I mean, you probably never used any of this when you were playing soldier up in space, right?" Jake laughed and looked around for support from his friends. "Must be nice pretending to fight aliens while real people down here deal with real problems." The classroom went quiet. Not the normal quiet when kids stop talking because the teacher gives them a look. This was a different kind of quiet, heavy and uncomfortable. Something changed in Lisa's face. Her eyes went from warm brown to cold and hard. Her hand stopped moving on the blackboard. For just a second, she was not standing in a high school classroom anymore. She was back on the USS Meridian, running through corridors filled with smoke and sparks. She could hear the sound of plasma bolts hitting the walls around her. She could smell the burned metal and the worst smell of burned flesh. She could feel the weight of her rifle in her hands and the weight of command on her shoulders. She remembered New Geneva Station. The Zephyrian ships had come out of nowhere, fast and deadly. The station had 5,000 people living and working there, families, children, scientists who had never held a weapon in their lives. Lisa's platoon had been the only military unit close enough to help. 23 soldiers against 3. Alien warships. The math was simple, and it was bad. She remembered the sound Captain Coleman made when the plasma bolt went through his chest. She remembered holding the line in the main corridor while civilians ran behind her toward the escape pods. She remembered watching good people die so that others could live. But mostly she remembered the weight. The weight of every decision that meant life or death for someone else. The weight of knowing that if she made the wrong choice, families would never see each other again. Jake's voice brought her back to the present. "See? She's got nothing to say because it was all just pretend." Lisa turned around slowly. When she looked at Jake, he stopped smiling. Something in her expression made him sit back in his chair. "You want to know about real problems, Mr. Sullivan?" Lisa's voice was quiet, but everyone in the room could hear every word. "Let me tell you about real problems." She walked closer to his desk. Her steps were different now. Not like a teacher, but like someone who had learned to move carefully in dangerous places. Real problems are when you're floating in space because a plasma torpedo just blew a hole in your ship's hull. Real problems are when you have to choose which injured soldier to save first, because you don't have enough medical supplies for everyone. Real problems are when you hold your friend's hand while he dies, and you can't do anything to stop it. The mime. Room was so quiet that Lisa could hear the clock on the wall ticking. Amy Peterson, her best student, was staring with wide eyes. Even the kids who never paid attention were listening now. Real problems are when you're the only thing standing, between 3,000 alien soldiers and 5,000 innocent people, who never asked to be in a war. Real problems are when you have to make decisions that keep you awake at night for the rest of your life. Lisa's hand moved to her left arm without her thinking about it. Under her sleeve was a long scar from a Zephyrian energy blade. The alien, who gave it to her, would never hurt anyone again, but the scar still ached when it rained. Jake's face had gone pale. His friends were not laughing anymore. No one was laughing. So yes, Mr. Sullivan. I used physics in space. I used it to calculate trajectory when we were running low on ammunition. I used it to figure out how much thrust we needed to push a damaged transport ship out of the combat zone. I used it to save lives while people like you slept safe in your beds. Principal Henry Carter appeared in the doorway. He had been walking past and heard the unusual silence from a classroom that was usually full of teenage chatter. Carter was a smart man who had served in the military himself, though his war had been different from Lisa's. He took one look at Lisa's face and knew what was happening. Lisa caught herself. She saw the fear in some of the students' faces and realized she had gone too far. These were kids, not soldiers. They did not deserve to see the dark places her mind went to. Class dismissed, she said, her voice back to normal teacher volume. Read chapter 12 for tomorrow. We'll have a quiz on Friday. The students gathered their books quickly and quietly. They filed out of the room without the usual talking and joking. Jake Sullivan looked like he wanted to say something, but he just picked up his backpack and left with the others. Amy Peterson was the last to leave. She stopped at Lisa's desk and looked up at her teacher with serious eyes. Mrs. Martinez, are you okay? Lisa forced a smile that did not reach her eyes. I'm fine, Amy, just fine. But she was not fine, and they both knew it. Amy nodded and left, closing the door behind her. Lisa stood alone in her empty classroom, surrounded by physics equations and teenage desk graffiti. Outside, the kids were still playing on the grass field, still running and laughing. But inside room 204, the war had followed her home once again. Lisa sat at her desk after school, staring at the physics problems she was supposed to grade. The numbers and equations blurred together on the page. Her hands shook just enough that she had to put down her red pen. The afternoon sun came through the windows and made long shadows across the empty desks. Usually she liked this quiet time when all the students had gone home. Today the silence felt heavy and wrong. Dr. Elena Vasquez knocked on the open door and walked in without waiting for permission. Elena was the school counselor, a small woman with kind eyes and gray streaks in her black hair. She had been trying to get Lisa to talk for months. Henry told me what happened this morning, Elena said. She pulled a student chair next to Lisa's desk and sat down. Want to talk about it? Lisa laughed, but it sounded bitter and tired. What's there to talk about? I lost my temper with a kid who doesn't know any better. Great teacher I turned out to be. You're human, Lisa. You've been through things most people can't imagine. The war ended 3 years ago. I should be over it by now. Elena leaned forward in the small plastic chair. Lisa, you were a commander in the Space Marines. You fought in battles that saved thousands of lives. You won medals for courage. That doesn't just disappear because you changed jobs? Lisa's jaw got tight. It should disappear. These kids need a teacher, not some broken soldier who sees enemies around every corner. You're not broken. You're dealing with something difficult. Lisa stood up and walked to the window. On the field below, the soccer team was practicing. Kids ran back and forth, kicking the ball and shouting to each other. Their biggest worry was probably whether they would win their game on Friday. You don't understand, Lisa said without turning around. When Jake made that joke about playing, soldier, I wasn't here anymore. I was back on the Meridian watching my friends die. I could smell the smoke and hear the alarms. For a second, I thought I was still there. Elena was quiet for a moment. That's called a flashback. It's normal for people who have been through combat. Normal? There's nothing normal about it. I'm supposed to be teaching these kids about gravity and momentum, not thinking about plasma rifles and dead bodies. But your experiences help you teach, don't they? You understand physics in ways other teachers don't because you've seen it work in extreme situations. Lisa turned around. Elena was right, but Lisa did not want to admit it. When she taught about acceleration, She remembered the crushing feeling of high-speed turns in a combat ship. When she explained energy transfer, she thought about the terrible power of weapons hitting their targets. "That's different," Lisa said. "Is it? You make physics real for these students because you've lived it." A knock on the door interrupted them. Amy Peterson stood there holding her tablet computer. She looked nervous but determined. "Mrs. Martinez? I'm sorry to bother you, but I wanted to show you something." Lisa looked at Elena, who nodded. "It's okay, Amy, come in." Amy walked over and held out her tablet. "After class today, I went to the library and looked up what you said about New Geneva Station. I found news videos from when it happened." Lisa felt her stomach drop. "Amy, you shouldn't be researching that." "But I wanted to understand. Look at this." Amy turned the tablet so Lisa could see the screen. It showed a news report from 3 years ago. The reporter was standing in front of a space station that looked like it had been through a hurricane. Parts of it were twisted and blackened from weapons fire. "This is footage from the evacuation of New Geneva Station," the reporter was saying. "Military sources confirmed that a single Marine platoon held off 3 Zephyrian assault ships while civilians escaped. The platoon was led by Commander Lisa Martinez, who has been recommended for the Solar Cross for her actions during the battle." Amy looked up at Lisa with wide eyes. "You saved all those people?" Lisa sat down heavily in her chair. She had not watched news reports about the battle. She had lived through it once, and that was enough. "Amy, this isn't something we should be talking about. This is private." "But it's amazing. You're a hero and you never told us. Heroes are for movies and books. Real life is messier than that." Elena spoke up. "Amy, can I ask you something? How does it feel to know that your teacher has this kind of experience?" Amy thought for a moment. "It makes me want to listen more in class. When Mrs. Martinez explains how forces work, I know she's not just reading from a book. She's seen these things happen for real." Lisa looked at Amy's young face, so eager and curious. "It wasn't like in the movies, Amy. People got hurt. Good, people died. I made mistakes that cost lives. But you saved people too. The news said 5,000 people got off that station alive because of what you did." Lisa was quiet for a long time. She remembered the evacuation, the chaos and fear, the sound of children crying as their parents carried them to the escape pods. She also remembered the relief when the last transport ship jumped to safety. "I did my job," Lisa said finally. "That's all." "No," Amy said firmly. "You did more than your job. You could have left when the other ships arrived, but you stayed until everyone was safe." Elena smiled. "Amy, would you like to hear about the time your teacher used physics to save a damaged transport ship?" Lisa shot Elena a warning look, but Amy's eyes lit up. "Really? Please tell me, Mrs. Martinez." Lisa looked at both of them, then sighed. Maybe Elena was right. Maybe hiding from her past was not helping anyone, including herself. "It wasn't heroic," Lisa said. "It was just math and desperation." "Tell me anyway," Amy said. Lisa sat back in her chair and closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, she was looking at 2 people who wanted to understand, not judge. "The transport ship's engines were damaged," Lisa began. "It was drifting toward the gravity well of a gas giant. If it got pulled in, 300 people would die. But I remembered something from my physics classes about using gravity as a slingshot." Amy leaned forward, completely focused. "We used the ship's remaining fuel to push it into a specific orbit around the planet. The gravity pulled the ship faster and faster until it had enough speed to break free and reach the jump point." "That's incredible," Amy whispered. "It was terrifying. If I had calculated wrong, those people would have died because of my mistake." Elena nodded. "But you didn't calculate wrong. You saved them." Lisa looked out the window again. The soccer team was finishing practice, gathering their equipment and heading inside. Soon their parents would pick them up and take them home to dinner and homework and normal teenage problems. "I saved some people," Lisa said quietly. "I couldn't save them all." Amy stood up and put her tablet away. "Mrs. Martinez, can I ask you something?" "What is it, Amy?" "Tomorrow in class, When you teach us about orbital mechanics, can you tell us about the transport ship? Not the scary parts, just the physics parts. I think it would help us understand better. Lisa looked at this 16-year-old girl who was asking her to be both a teacher and a person who had lived through extraordinary things. Maybe, Lisa said. We'll see. Amy smiled and headed for the door. Thank you for telling me. I'll see you tomorrow. After Amy left, Elena and Lisa sat in comfortable silence for a while. She's right, you know, Elena said finally. Your students can learn more from you because of what you've experienced, not in spite of it. Lisa nodded slowly. Maybe it was time to stop running from her past and start figuring out how to live with it. It's going to take time, Lisa said. The best things usually do, Elena replied. By Friday morning, everything had changed at Roosevelt High School. Word spread fast among teenagers, and soon everyone knew their physics teacher was not just any teacher. She was Commander Lisa Martinez, war hero, medal winner, the woman who had saved thousands of lives in space. Lisa walked down the hallway and noticed students looking at her differently. Some stared with curiosity. Others whispered to their friends when she passed. A few even nodded respectfully, like they were greeting someone important. She did not like the attention. She had become a teacher to blend in, to be normal, to help. Kids learn without anyone asking questions about her past. Now her past was following her everywhere. Jake Sullivan was waiting by her classroom door when she arrived. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. His usual confident attitude was gone. Mrs. Martinez, can I talk to you for a minute? Lisa unlocked her classroom door and turned on the lights. What is it, Jake? I wanted to say I'm sorry. About what I said on Tuesday. I didn't know. I didn't understand what you had been through. Lisa set her bag on the desk and looked at him. Jake was tall for 17, with dark hair and eyes that reminded her of someone. She could not place who it was. You don't need to apologize for not knowing something, Jake. How could you have known? My dad told me you served on the USS Meridian. My uncle was on that ship too. Danny Sullivan, he was an engineer. Lisa felt her breath catch in her throat. Danny Sullivan. She remembered him clearly now. He had been young, maybe 22, with the same dark eyes as Jake. He had been one of the good ones, always quick with a joke or a helping hand. Danny had died in Engineering Bay 3 during their last battle with the Zephyrian flagship. A plasma conduit had exploded and he had stayed behind to keep the reactor stable while everyone else evacuated. Without him, the whole ship would have been destroyed. Danny was a good man, Lisa said quietly. He saved all of us. Jake's eyes, filled with tears, he was trying hard not to show. He never came home. Mom always said he died being a hero, but I never really understood what that meant. I was only 14 when it happened. Lisa sat down at her desk and gestured for Jake to take a seat. What do you want to know? What was he like? I knew him when I was little, but I want to know what he was like as a soldier. Lisa thought about Danny Sullivan. He had been the kind of person who made everyone around him feel better. When things got scary, he would start singing old songs from Earth. When someone was hurt, he was always the first to help. When the fighting got bad, he never complained or gave up. Your uncle was the kind of person who made everyone else braver just by being there, Lisa said. When we were under attack, he would keep working on the engines and singing songs so loud we could hear him over the weapons fire. It made us all feel like everything would be okay. Jake wiped his eyes with his sleeve. What happened to him? Lisa was quiet for a long moment. She had never told anyone about Danny's last moments, not even in her official reports. The ship was badly damaged. We were losing power and the reactor was becoming unstable. Everyone in engineering was ordered to evacuate, but Danny stayed behind. He knew that if the reactor exploded, 800 people would die. Including you, including me. He worked for 20 minutes to stabilize the system while the ship was falling apart around him. He got it working just long enough for us to escape, but he ran out of time to save himself. Jake was crying now, not trying to hide it anymore. I used to be angry at him for leaving us. I thought he chose the military over his family. He didn't choose the military over his family, Jake. He chose to save families. Hundreds of them, including the families of his shipmates who would have died if he had left his post. Lisa reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a small metal object. It was a ship's insignia, the kind that crew members wore on their uniforms. This belonged to your uncle. I've been carrying it since the day he died. I think it should go to someone in his family. Jake took the insignia with shaking hands. Why did you keep it? Because I wanted to remember him, and because I hoped someday I could tell someone who loved him what kind of man he really was. The first period bell rang, and students started filing into the classroom. Jake stood up and put the insignia in his pocket. Thank you, Mrs. Martinez, for telling me the truth. Thank you for asking, Jake. It felt good to talk about him. As the morning went on, Lisa found herself telling more stories. When she taught about energy transfer, she mentioned how Danny had redirected power from damaged systems. When she explained pressure and temperature, she talked about working in the vacuum of space. The students listened with attention she had never seen before. They asked questions about physics that went far beyond what was in their textbook. They wanted to know how things worked in real situations, not just in theory. Amy Peterson raised her hand during third period. Mrs. Martinez, when you were fighting the aliens, did you ever think about the physics of what you were doing, or did you just react? Lisa thought about it. Both, I think. In the moment, you react based on your training. But later, when you have time to think, you realize how much physics was involved in everything that happened. Can you give us an example? Lisa walked to the blackboard and drew a simple diagram. When we were trying to escape from a Zephyrian battleship, we had to use the gravity of a nearby planet to change our direction quickly. It's called a gravity assist, and it's all about momentum and orbital mechanics. She explained how they had used the planet's gravity to speed up and change course, just like space probes had been doing for decades. But instead of exploring the solar system, they were trying to save lives. The math was the same, Lisa said, but the stakes were higher. At lunch, Lisa ate in her classroom instead of going to the teacher's lounge. She needed quiet time to think about how much her life had changed in just 1 week. Principal Henry Carter knocked on her door and came in carrying 2 cups of coffee. Thought you might need this, he said, handing her one of the cups. Thanks, Henry. It's been a strange week. Carter sat down across from her. The students are talking about you differently, in a good way. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Lisa, I've been in education for 20 years. I've never seen kids this excited about physics. You're not just teaching them formulas anymore. You're showing them how science applies to real life. Lisa sipped her coffee. I don't want to be the teacher who only talks about war stories. You're not. You're the teacher who shows them that knowledge has power, that understanding how the world works can help them make a difference. That afternoon, Lisa was cleaning the blackboard when Admiral Rick Coleman appeared in her doorway. She had not seen him in over a year, and his presence in her classroom felt strange and out of place. Rick, what are you doing here? Coleman looked older than she remembered. His hair was completely gray now, and he had new lines around his eyes. He wore a civilian suit instead of his uniform. We need to talk, Lisa. There's a situation developing. Lisa set down her eraser. What kind of situation? The kind that requires your particular skills. The Zephyrian ambassador is coming to Earth next week for the peace treaty anniversary. Intelligence suggests there might be threats against him. I'm a teacher now, Rick. I don't do that work anymore. I'm not asking you to pick up a weapon. I'm asking you to do what you do best, protect people. The ambassador wants to visit American schools as part of his cultural exchange program. Lisa felt her stomach tighten. Which schools? Roosevelt High is on the list. Lisa looked around her classroom at the student desks and the physics posters on the walls. This was her world now, her responsibility. These kids trusted her to keep them safe, even if they did not know it. What do you need me to do? Just be ready. If something happens, you're the only person I trust to handle it. Lisa nodded slowly. The war might be over, but her duty to protect innocent people would never end. I'll be ready. Coleman smiled grimly. I knew you would be. Some things never Change, Commander. It's Mrs. Martinez now, Lisa said. But you're right. Some things never change. After he left, Lisa stood alone in her classroom, looking out at the soccer field where kids were practicing. Soon she might have to be both, teacher and protector. She just hoped she was strong enough for both jobs. The day of Ambassador Kethvar's visit started early for Lisa. She arrived at school 2 hours before classes began, her eyes automatically scanning the parking lot and building entrances. Old habits from her military days kicked in without her thinking about it. The Zephyrian ambassador was nothing like the soldiers Lisa had fought during the war, where the warriors had been brutal and violent. Ambassador Kethvar moved with calm dignity. He stood 7 feet tall, his blue-green scales catching the morning light. His large eyes showed intelligence and something that surprised Lisa completely. Kindness. Commander Martinez, he said, when Principal Carter introduced them. His English was perfect with just a slight accent that made his words sound musical. It's Mrs. Martinez now, Lisa replied carefully. I teach physics here. Yes, I know, from warrior to teacher. A noble change. The morning went better than Lisa had expected. Ambassador Kethvar spoke to social studies classes about Zephyrian culture. He showed students holographic images of his home world, with its purple skies and floating cities. He answered questions about space travel and alien technology with patience and humor. Lisa stayed in the background, watching for any signs of trouble. But the students were fascinated, not frightened. They asked dozens of questions and seemed genuinely interested in learning about their former enemies. During third period, Amy Peterson asked the question that changed everything. Ambassador Kethvar, why did your people attack us in the first place? The alien's expression became serious. Because we were afraid, young one. Your species spreads across the galaxy very quickly, building colonies and claiming worlds. We thought you would take everything and leave nothing for others. And now? Amy asked. What do you think now? Kethvar looked around the classroom, then his eyes found Lisa. Now I understand that humans do not just take. You also protect. You teach. You turn warriors into teachers and enemies into friends. Lisa felt uncomfortable with the praise, but before she could respond, Principal Carter appeared in the doorway. He walked quickly to Lisa and whispered urgently in her ear. We have a problem. 3 vehicles just pulled up outside. Armed men are getting out. Lisa's military training took over instantly. Her body tensed and her mind began calculating distances, escape routes, and defensive positions. Emergency lockdown now. Protocol 7, she told Carter. Carter nodded and activated the school's alarm system. Students looked confused as teachers began moving them away from windows and toward secure areas. What is happening? Ambassador Kethvar asked. Probably extremists who want to kill you and restart the war, Lisa said, her voice calm despite the danger. She was already moving toward the window to assess the threat. 6 men in black tactical gear approached the main entrance. They carried military-style weapons and moved with the coordination of trained soldiers. Lisa recognized the signs immediately. She turned to Amy and Jake, who had stayed close to her. You two, help get the other students to the gymnasium. It's the safest place in the building. What about you? Amy asked, fear clear in her voice. Lisa was studying the attackers' positions and planning her response. I'm going to do what I do best. Admiral Coleman's voice came through the small radio earpiece Lisa wore. Lisa, security teams are 15 minutes away. Can you hold that long? Lisa looked at her students, at Ambassador Kethvar, at the school that had become her new mission. With these kids' lives at stake, I'll hold as long as it takes. She turned to the ambassador. Kethvar, are you willing to trust someone who used to be your enemy? The tall alien straightened to his full height. Mrs. Martinez, I would trust you with my life. Good, because that's exactly what I'm asking you to do. What happened next was the most intense 47 minutes of combat Lisa had experienced since the war ended. But this was different from space battles. This was personal. These were her students, her school, her responsibility. Lisa used every trick she had learned in 3 years of fighting aliens. She knew Roosevelt High better than the attackers did, and she used that knowledge like a weapon. She led the attackers through the building, always staying one step ahead, always keeping them away from the students. When they followed her down the science hallway, she used fire extinguishers to create thick clouds that blinded them. In the chemistry lab, she mixed cleaning supplies to make smoke that sent them running for fresh air. The attackers had better weapons, but Lisa had something more important. She was fighting to protect people she cared about. When they cornered her near the cafeteria, she dumped cooking oil on the floor and scattered marbles from the art room. 2 attackers slipped and fell hard. When they tried to follow her up the stairs, she had rigged the steps with more oil and loose boards from the shop class. Lisa had no guns, no armor, no military backup. She had only her brain, her training, and her absolute determination to keep everyone safe. Ambassador Kethvar stayed with the students in the gymnasium, but he also helped. His alien technology included a communication device that let him coordinate with Lisa through the building's intercom system. 2 attackers moving toward the east wing, his voice announced over the speakers. "Roger that," Lisa replied already, moving to intercept them. The attackers had expected to find a school full of helpless victims. Instead, they found a building that seemed to fight back, guided by someone who knew every corner and hiding place. When security forces finally arrived, they found Lisa Martinez standing guard outside the gymnasium. She was breathing hard and her clothes were torn, but she was unharmed. Ambassador Kethvar stood beside her, also safe. The 6 attackers were scattered throughout the building, all captured or incapacitated by a middle-aged physics teacher who had refused to let anyone hurt her students later. As police and investigators filled the school, Amy Peterson found Lisa sitting quietly in room 204. "Mrs. Martinez, are you okay?" Lisa looked up at her student, this brave girl who had helped keep other students calm during the crisis. "I'm fine, Amy, are you?" "Yes. But I wanted to tell you something." "What's that?" Amy sat down in the front row, the same seat she had occupied all semester. "I understand now why you brought your war memories into our classroom." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "Oh? You didn't bring them to scare us or to show off. You brought them to protect us. All that experience, all those skills, you've been carrying them like tools in case we ever needed them." Lisa felt tears she did not expect. "That's what teachers do, Amy. We protect the future." Admiral Coleman appeared in the doorway. "Outstanding work, Commander." "Mrs. Martinez," Lisa corrected with a small smile. "I have papers to grade." As the day ended and the school slowly returned to normal, Lisa stood once again at her window, looking out at the soccer field. The team was practicing, running and shouting, and being normal teenagers again. The war memories would always be with her, but now she understood how to carry them. They were not a burden or a curse. They were tools, skills, experiences that made her better at her most important job, protecting and teaching the next generation. Jake Sullivan knocked on her door. "Mrs. Martinez, I just wanted to say thank you for keeping us safe." "That's my job, Jake." "No," he said seriously. "That was way more than your job. That was what my uncle would have done." Lisa smiled, thinking about Danny Sullivan and all the good people who had given their lives to protect others. "Your uncle would be proud of you today. You helped keep the younger students calm." "I learned from the best teacher." As Jake left, Lisa looked around room 204 one more time. Tomorrow there would be physics to teach, equations to explain, and young minds to inspire. Her war was over, but her mission continued. She was exactly where she belonged.